In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 152 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is being a warrior. Our quote of the day comes to us from Bruce Lee. The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is an honor to bring you today's episode. Although she and I only recently met, we have a lot in common and we immediately connected. From Wall Street to a warrior, from Long Island, New York to Colombia, Whitney Cox has dealt with her fair share of obstacles. Not one to quit though, she stayed focused, worked extremely hard, and has built an incredibly successful career. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Whitney, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Oh, you know it. I'm ready to bring the pain.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that. So before we went live, we talked about the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a no-quit story yourself or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and you didn't quit.
Yeah, Chris, that's actually a great question. And the story that just comes to mind right off the top of my head immediately is last year at the ripe old age of 39, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And basically every fear a woman could have, I guess, really just came crashing down on my shoulders all at once. So, whether it was my mortality, my vanity, my fertility, financial fears, professional fears, relationship fears. I mean, literally, like my life had like an atom bomb dropped on it. And what I realize now, 18 months later, is that my life getting burned to the ground, in quotes, was actually planting the seeds of my rebirth. So there I was with no job. My finances were running out because who knew that cancer was so expensive? No idea what I was going to do with my life. And from that experience, fast forward to today, and I'm the CEO of two companies that deeply fulfill me. I get to spend my time dedicated to doing what I love most in life. I basically live the life of my dreams, which I definitely couldn't say even just a few short months ago. So what I want to impress upon listeners is that, it is always possible to pull victory from the jaws of defeat if you believe that it is possible.
That's an amazing story that you touch on as far as what happened when you were diagnosed. But I wanted to just ask you real quick, that last quote you just stated, is that something that you found along the way during your recovery, or is it something that you've always kind of had in the back of your mind?
I think during my recovery, I was really forced to come face to face with that. I mean, I've been through, I guess I've always been a bit of like a boundary pusher and a risk taker in my life, leaving at the top of my game on Wall Street 5 years ago and just saying goodbye to it all to pursue a life down in Colombia. But I think my brush with cancer, for me, coming face to face with really having everything taken away and not knowing what the heck I was going to do next, was one of the most valuable lessons I was ever taught. And I remember after my surgery, it was like, I thought it was just going to be like getting a boob job or something. Like, it was so much worse than that. And it was very painful, very difficult recovery. And I would just lie in bed at night and kind of stare at the ceiling, and I couldn't move because who knew you use your chest muscles like in everything. And I would just stare at the ceiling in pain. And I remember just coming face to face with this, like, it was almost like a come to Jesus moment with myself. And it was like, okay, Whitney, like, you have all the reason in the world to feel like a victim, to feel like you got the short straw in life, to live the rest of your life feeling miserable and unhappy and afraid for what's coming next. Or you can just make the best with the rest of the time that you have. And for me, the answer was very, very clear what I wanted to do with the time that I had left in life. And I had no idea what was going to happen next, right? But I believed that more than anything, that I wanted to live a good and happy life above all else, and that I was not going to spend one more minute doing something that I didn't love for in the name of some security, this vision or this idea that we have of security, which is not secure at all, right? So I think, I've always been a risk taker, but I think my battle with cancer was something that really, really helped me to internalize that, and has really, really changed the way that I live my life.
I think it's amazing that you could take such a tough point in your life and turn it into a positive. And I don't want to say in any way that I know exactly what you went through, because I don't, but I think all the listeners here know somebody, unfortunately, that's been touched with cancer and by cancer. And I think the amazing thing that you shared is it got to a point where you decided that you needed to do something. And I think we all encounter different challenges, some way more difficult than others, but the reality is every single person gets knocked down. And the question is, do you get back up? And the question is, do you become a better version of yourself? And obviously, you've done that. So I wanted to ask you, speaking about your transition from Wall Street, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about what you actually do today.
Sure. So what I do today is I'm the CEO of two companies. The first one is called Warrior Girl Life Coaching, and that was really a direct result of the whole process that I have, personal development process, spiritual development process that I've undergone basically since I left Wall Street, but my battle with cancer really cemented it. So what I do is I work with women, and it's called Warrior Girl, Fight for the Life You Love. And I help women that are looking to live lives that are more aligned with their authentic selves, right? I think we were talking a little bit earlier about how, I had this life on Wall Street where, all the boxes of, the traditional measures of success, I had all those boxes ticked. Went to Ivy League school, got my master's, worked for 15 years on Wall Street, was managing money at one of the, the biggest funds in the world, the fancy apartment in the West Village. Like, by traditional measures, I had everything to be successful and by default be happy. And I wasn't happy. I felt like I was living someone else's life. I felt like it was a life that someone else, it was like almost like someone put like a suit on me that was just like a suit that someone else picked out, and it wasn't necessarily the one that I wanted to wear. And so what I do is my programs, I have one-on-one coaching programs and I have retreat programs. I work with women and I give them the exact techniques that I used and continue to use to transform my life. So that's Warrior Girl. And then I also have a clothing company, which is called Plan de Coco. And it is a clothing company where I use African fabrics to design like really chic, modern, fun pieces.
Well, that's interesting. That's quite a array of businesses and careers, from the Wall Street to coaching to having a clothing line. I think that's interesting. But the reality of it is that you're doing things on your terms. And I think that's awesome, because so many people, I feel, want to write that book, or they want to start that company, or they want to switch jobs, or they want to move from East Coast to the West Coast, what have you. And a lot of the times it's the fear. It's, well, I can't do it now. It's not a good time. So I think it's incredible how you took, like I said, a tough time in your life, and eventually at some point you said, you know what, if it's up to me, if it's to be, it's got to be up to me. And I think that's really really interesting. So touching on some of your success that you've had, wanted to ask you, how do you define success, or what does success mean to you?
Yeah, I think success means defining your own measures of success. It means defining your own belief system. So it means really getting in touch with what it is that you want and having the guts to get up and fight for it every day. Because I'm sure, Chris, you know just as well as I do that the entrepreneurial path is not an easy one. Taking the road less traveled is not an easy one because you don't have that formula already laid out for you. And so it's having that courage to really get up every day, because the people that have success getting the lives of their dreams are the people that fight over and over and over to get it, no matter how many times they fail, right? And a lot of times, especially on this path, the success is defined by your failures. And so I think, the person that is brave enough to actually challenge what we're taught that we need to believe, that we need to accept in order to be happy, and is willing to fight for it despite it's like trading in your security for your freedom. That to me is a successful person. I think the most important thing that you can do, I don't know about you, but I grew up and I was taught that nobody liked their jobs and you just had to do your job and make as much money as you could. And then one day, eventually, you'll be able to live the life that you want to live. What about living it today?
No, that's an awesome definition of it. And I think you said some really good things, but one thing you just said at the end is, what about living it today? I think so many people, especially in our country, the whole concept or the idea of working, saving, investing, and then someday, quote unquote, you'll retire and then you'll get to enjoy life. And I'm not in any way saying, you should enjoy life from 22 on and, not work hard and just go out and play. But I think so many people are focused with that idea of retirement and then you start living it. So I love that. Why not start today?
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely took me getting sick, to realize that.
No, I like I said a couple of times already, just your story with that component is a challenging story enough, but you continue to keep doing things. But you referenced once or twice is, you learned from it, you kept on, and it kind of made you think about life. And I think that's the one thing that I referenced before is that we all know people that have been touched with cancer. Some people, unfortunately, are no longer with us. Some people are now perfectly fine, just like you are. But the reality is we all know somebody that has dealt with it, and it tests you. And I just appreciate you touching on that. So interesting question for you. If you could define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
That's such a good question. So many words are coming to my mind, but I'm going to say brave.
I think that's definitely a good word based on your story. And one of the things we try to do on every episode is just share different things with our listeners. So I was curious if you have either a morning or a daily ritual that you swear by.
I absolutely do, and I love that question. Thank you for asking it. A few years ago when I worked on Wall Street, I had to be in the office at 6 a.m. every day. And I basically had my morning routine timed to the exact minute to give me the most amount of minutes sleeping every day. So I think I had it timed down to like 23 minutes or something. I would get torn out of bed in the pitch black with my alarm, get ready super quick and be at my desk, in 23 minutes flat with my coffee in my hand. And I lived like that for many, many years. And when I started making these changes to my life, I now today get up a full hour earlier than I need to get up. It's a no cell phone zone, so I don't even touch my phone. I spend the first part of that hour getting in touch with my vision, my dream. I believe that the universe is just a huge mirror, and so it just reflects back to us what we are transmitting. And so what better way to get a life that's aligned with your dreams than by focusing on your vision for that dream. So for me, I like to write. So I write down every morning what my dream life looks like. And I focus on a bunch of different things, like what's my emotional health like? How do I feel? What sort of state am I in? What is the material aspects of it look like? What kind of job am I doing? Where am I doing it? How do my days look? So I really get crazy in touch with my dream. And then I do exercises. I'm a big writer. So I do my gratitude lists. I do a list of all of the things. If somebody can think of a better name for this list, I would love to know, but I call it the thank you for the things I'm pissed off about list. So it's different than the gratitude list. And it's like, I had to do this a lot when I was first diagnosed with cancer. It was like, what is the thing that's bothering you right now? The Buddha says that every situation holds a blessing in life. The trick is to find it. And so I would think, okay, thank God I had cancer in a part of my body that could be removed. Thank God that I didn't have to do chemo. Thank God that they found it early. I mean, there was a million blessings that I could find in my cancer. And I do that. I continue to do that today. There could just be even small things that are really bothering me. And I think of all the positive things that come out of that. And then the idea with those exercises is getting your vibe as positive as possible, right? Because the more positive that we're thinking, the more we're focused on our blessings and the things that are going well, the more the universe will reflect that back to us. And then I spend the second half of that meditating. And meditation for me, I mean, in the beginning, like I couldn't even sit still for 1 minute, like a Wall Street trader. Like I couldn't even I was like totally ADD. And over the course of the years, I've built a meditation practice, which for me has been so fundamental in reducing the emotionality of my responses, because it gives you like the split second of a pause between your emotion and your reaction. And we all know that pause, I mean, that can be the difference between making and breaking a relationship, something that you said that maybe you regretted, or the way that you reacted. And so for me, all of these exercises, I now look at it as a total luxury that I give to myself every morning. That hour that I have to focus on my vision, to get in touch with my intuition through meditation. If you want to live a life according to your dreams and the calling of your heart, you need to get in touch with your intuition, and keeping my vibration and my mindset as positive as possible. And it just sets the tone for the rest of my day. Like I can't live without that routine. I do it every day.
No, I think you definitely have a very specific routine, which is really neat. And the reason I asked that question is, one of the things I've been asked on other podcasts as a guest is based on the question I ask on my show. People have said to me, or they've asked, what is it about the morning ritual? What is it about routine? And I think what I recommend to our listeners is we all should learn from others. And I don't mean mimicking and copying and doing it verbatim, word for word, but I think that's the best way to learn for yourself. And what I recommend people often to do is just try different things. So if any of our listeners thought anything that Whitney said was interesting, I would recommend trying it. And I got to ask you, in regards to the meditation component, is there an app or a program you use, or do you use do you do your own thing?
I do my own thing, but I have dabbled in apps in the past. There's one app that I really love that's called Headspace, and it's very, very simple, and it just helps you to keep in touch with your breath. And so I would really recommend that for someone who wants a little bit more guidance in their meditations. Otherwise, I would recommend just literally focusing on your breath going in and out of your nose. And every time your thoughts wander, you just simply bring your attention and your focus back to your breath. And it's really just that simple.
No, that's awesome. That is an app that I'm actually using as we speak myself. And a girl that I'm friends with at my gym, she actually goes into one of the yoga rooms every day that's quiet. There's nobody in there. And she finishes her workout and does everything. And her headspace is 10 minutes. And it's always interesting because I see her often coming out of the room, and she always seems to be in a different frame of mind. So she's actually one of the people in my life that I actually spoke to about that concept. So I'm glad you touched on that for our listeners.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's great. It's been so transformative for me.
So as we're always looking to add different value, one of the questions I ask is if there's anything that you've read recently, or perhaps you're reading now, that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I'm not sure if you've heard of the book. It's called You're a Badass. It's by, I'm trying to remember the name of the author.
Jen. Yep, I'm a big fan of that book. Why am I drawing? Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
It's like an Italian last name. Yeah, she.
Cicero or Cicero?
Yeah. Jen. Yeah, maybe it's Jen Cicero. I think she, for me, I love her book because it's so much about mindset. It's Jen Sincero. Yeah, Jen Sincero, and it really it really like reminds you that like we are literally like humans, we're creative beings, and like the way that we create, they talk about it in this book Conversations with God, which is another book that by Neil Donald Walsh, which completely changed the course of my life. I actually have two tattoos that were inspired by Conversations with God, but it says that as human beings we create on three levels: thought, word, and deed. So you have to be really careful what you think, because what you think becomes what you speak, and what you speak becomes what you do, and what you do becomes your reality.
No, that's awesome, and I think it's pretty cool how you took that book and you got tattoos. So that's literally a part of you forever.
Yeah, that's not very Wall Street, right, Chris?
No, it depends. You just don't tell people about it on Wall Street.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question for you. Assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what's the one piece of advice you would have given to the 20-year-old Whitney?
I would have told 20-year-old Whitney that she needs to figure out what it is that she loves to do, what makes her feel like a child again, what makes her lose track of time because she's so entertained and so wrapped up in what she's doing, and dedicate her life to doing that. And I would give her permission to do that. And I would give her permission to fly her freak flag, because flying our freak flag, we're taught to just like fall in line, right? Especially like, in a Wall Street environment or a team sports is like, fall in line, be a good soldier, fall in line, right? But what makes us truly unique is our weirdness. And me embracing my weirdness in all its glory has been what has been able to, it's what makes me uniquely qualified to help others.
It's really neat that you touch on that, because I think that's something that from a young age, especially in America, we all follow what it is. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And I don't want to say that there's anything wrong with that, but I think some of the most successful people that I look up to aren't the people that do everything completely different or just crazy on the whim, but they're people that followed something that they were passionate about and they had a unique interest or a unique talent. So I'm glad you touched that. I've never heard fly your freak flag before. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So interesting question for you. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh my God. That is such a good question. Who would I have dinner with?
You could take me out to dinner if you want.
I think I would have dinner with Prince.
Really? Okay.
I want to know why. I think I'm not a musician or anything like that, but this is a guy that, he danced to his own drum, literally. And in the beginning of his career, he was actually like booed off stage countless times. And this guy would like show up in like, chaps and nothing else. I mean, this guy like unapologetically embraced who he was and didn't give an SAH what anybody else said, right? And he ended up, by being authentically him, being one of the greatest musicians of all time. But he didn't start out that way, right? And I think that's like such a reminder for people that are trying to walk the road less traveled, to try to build authentic lives that are really aligned with their unique purpose. That is the path. That actually is the path. Sometimes it is about getting booed off the stage, right? But what if he had just fallen in line? We wouldn't have had Prince. We wouldn't have had Purple Rain.
I was about to say we would not have had Purple Rain. But the best part about that question is we've asked that now on, by the time this comes out, I believe 153rd episode. But the reason I love that question is we get different answers completely. And I think although you weren't a fan of his music, which is perfectly fine because we all have different tastes and things we like, but the best part about it was that it was his uniqueness and how he didn't fall in line, and I think that's why he eventually was successful. But the interesting part of that story that I took, what you shared, is that he was booed off the stage and he didn't stop. And then again, it's back to the theme of no quit living, and then back to what you said earlier also about success is we all learn from our failures. You either grow from them or you either let them stop you. And I think obviously he learned and he continued to do what he did, and he ended his career, like you said, as one of the all-time most successful musicians, depending upon how you define it. But he's just a remarkable person, and I like how you talked about the unique component, because that's obviously something that you believe in and you practice what you preach.
Yeah, and I think especially like as you go down, or for the listeners that are maybe just starting out their path to an entrepreneur, or maybe further along, it's what I've come to learn is that I think certainly before I got sick, I was like, okay, if I just like manage well, then my life will be perfect. And I was trying to live my life avoiding ever making any mistakes. And now I see my mistakes as actual like necessary opportunities, especially as an entrepreneur. Like sometimes I look like it's stuff that I've done in the past and I'm like, oh my God, that was awful. But I had to go through that and I had to learn. I learn, and it's certainly on this path, this entrepreneurial path, is through my mistakes. Because when I make mistakes, that I remember.
No, I think that's so true. And I think the whole concept of quitting and failure and how you look at it and mistakes, and it's so unique because it's what it's all about is you don't learn from the great times. You don't build from the best and days that are amazing. It's the other days where you don't want to keep going and you want to give up or throw in the towel. So I'm glad you touched on that. So I wanted to ask you, a word we talk about very often on not only our show, but also from the stage and with our coaching programs is accountability. What does accountability mean to you?
Accountability to me means taking responsibility for your life. It means, there's a quote. I don't know if you saw the movie or if people saw the movie Man on Fire with Denzel Washington.
Yep,
Probably came out like
great movie.
So there's a scene in that where the little girl is she's training for the swim meet, and she's like, "I'm good, right, Creasy?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "There's no such thing as good. You're either trained or untrained. Which one are you?" And I love that. That stuck with me. So that stuck with me because, the notion of accountability is discipline, right? And it's like showing up and doing what you're said you're going to do. And that is what success is built off of. It doesn't mean you're not going to have failures and have mistakes, but it's like you wake up every day and you're making that same commitment over and over again to this new life.
No, I love it. And that's another question that we ask almost every episode because it's got no right or wrong answer, just like the success question. So I'm really glad that you touched on it. And I'm a huge movie buff myself, so I'm glad that you threw in Man on Fire.
Such a good movie.
So you shared with me before we went live some exciting news about a retreat you have coming up in October, on October 11th. Would you mind just briefly telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the retreat, the name of the retreat is called the Warriors of the Road Less Traveled Retreat. It is going to be down here in my beloved Colombia. And the idea is it's intentionally a very small group of warriors. There are going to be 6 of us. I just have 2 spots left. And the idea is to really help people awaken to this new way of living that we were talking about. Everything has been expertly curated by yours truly to awaken your heart and soul to a higher calling. And at the same time, it's going to be this real inside look to the culture and the land that's completely transformed my life, right? So 4 years ago, I left my fancy job on Wall Street and packed my bags and came down to Colombia. And 4 years later, I want to share with people, everything along my path that has helped me really heal and get in touch with this life of my dreams. So there's going to be adventure. I mean, this is going to be a Colombia that nobody sees in any guidebooks. We're going to have cultural activities. We're going to have spiritual workshops. We're going to have adventure travel. We're going to have dancing, delicious local food, and tons of other surprises. So I'm so excited to really be able to have the opportunity to share a little bit of my journey down here in Colombia, while at the same time helping people to awaken to this new warrior girl way of living.
That sounds remarkable. And for those that are interested, what's the best way for someone to find out about that?
Sure. So you can follow me on Instagram. I have a ton of information that I've been posting on the retreat, which is Whitney Cox 1. You can also go to my website, which is whitneycoxcoaching.com. And then you can search for it. There's a tab that says check out my retreats, and you can see all the information and even set up a call to apply. And you can also email me, whitney@whitneycoxcoaching.com.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And then before we let you go, Whitney, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
I want to remind our listeners that the people that achieve the life of their dreams are the people that over and over and over again, despite failure, despite humiliation, despite fear, despite doubt, continue to choose this way of life.
I think that's great advice, and it means a lot coming from you, because you obviously overcome your fair share of obstacles, and leaving Wall Street and heading down to Colombia is pretty interesting. And I think it's really awesome how you're now sharing it back and paying it forward, in essence, through your retreat and allowing people to kind of get a glimpse of what it is that you did. And I definitely really appreciate not only your time, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And I just wanted to thank you for sharing some of that with us on today's episode.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I am so honored to be a part of No Quit Living.
Thank you for listening to episode number 152. Unfortunately, cancer is a word that we all hear far too often. With that diagnosis at the young age of only 39, Whitney had a decision to make: give up or become a warrior. She chose to become a warrior, and today she is a successful CEO of 2 different companies. Whitney's definition of success was very unique, but extremely true to who she is. She defines success as finding out what it is that you really and truly want, and then getting up every single day and fighting for it. Such a simple goal and concept, but something I think we all should probably focus on just a little bit more. Although Whitney has quite a specific morning routine, one thing that she said stood out to me. When it comes to her gratitude in the morning, she actually creates a thank you for the things I'm pissed off about list, and she mentioned how everything has a blessing. We just need to learn to find it and to look for it. I know personally this is something I'm looking to change in my life. In closing today, I would like to commend Whitney, not only for battling cancer head on, but for also having the courage to leave a very successful 15-year career on Wall Street, move to Colombia, and start 2 new companies. So my question to you, what is holding you back? What are you afraid of? As we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up, what idea, concept, business, or move have you not made, or quite possibly given up on? As we learned today from Whitney, you never know when or where your next challenge will come from. But when it does, you always have a choice. You can give in and coast, or you can become a warrior and grind it out. So I challenge you, when your next obstacle or challenge arises, and it will, don't give up, give in. Instead, dig in, face that challenge, face that obstacle head on, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.